latest episode of Silo Season 2 is here, and the entire episode focused primarily on the events of Silo 18, considering a lot happens there during the run. Finally, we glanced at Juliette's situation, only because of Dr. Pete and Walker's chat. Apart from some major developments, the episode brought previously doubtful characters to the front by giving them much more to play with. Let's go through Silo Season 2 Episode 6, and every single bit of the details that need some much needed attention to get a proper understanding of the situation inside the silos. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Quick recap. Before we get into nitpicking the details of every single event of significant consequence in the series, let's do a quick recap of the episode, just in case you missed anything. We start right where we left as Bernard takes things to the next level inside the silo by controlling the mass and setting up a barricade. He hasn't only blocked the path for the people from Mechanical to get through, but the barricade also has managed to block the path for significant resources like food and other important things from reaching down there. While it did manage to rile up the people at the Mechanical, as Bernard had planned, leaders like Knox and Shirley are ensuring a plan to overcome this circumstance. Apart from that, they seem to have some help from above because of the hashtag Juliette Lives campaign. But this isn't the only event that is of major consequence at the Down Below, considering Sheriff Billings is continuing his investigation using Kennedy, even though he has strict orders to apprehend Knox and Shirley for the murder of Judge Meadows. The episode focuses on Billings, considering it seems like he's taking a route that would be much different from before, and some decisions that might make sure Bernard doesn't trust him anymore. Bernard isn't doing much better either, as his plan seems to have quite a few holes, and everything seems to be going wrong. Things go bad enough that he's forced to see Meadows again to have a chat with her corpse at the morgue. Yes, things have gone wrong in his plans, but Bernard has hope yet, considering he has just tasted a major defeat when the rebels from the Mechanical showed a taste of what they could do by breaking through the barricade. Lucas has become a key figure to Bernard with his strong ability to solve problems, and thus he becomes Bernard's ally by being his shadow as he continues to go through the hard drive and the cryptic letter. Meanwhile, the previous candidate for this position, Sims, realizes the punishment he's been given limits his powers, even though he has essential information about what's been cooking inside the silo. But his wife Camille might have something of her own, as she manages to outsmart Bernard, even though it's clear that Bernard only hates this family more now. As Billings gets some major answers from Kennedy, we also get a chance to see a reunion between Dr. Pete Nichols and Martha Walker, as they discuss what might have happened to Juliette, and even Juliette gets a bit of screen time as we see her recovering from the last time we saw her with her injury, as Solo plans to strike up a deal with her. Now that we've had a glance at some of the key events of the episode, let's focus on the details that seem to have major consequences for what's next, and those that also need some attention. Things at the Mechanical. A lot is happening at the Mechanical, from housing the fugitives to a sheriff coming to terms with the events of the silo to food and resources being stopped, and then a complete uprising based on the circumstances. So, Bernard and his enforcers failed to ensure that Knox and Shirley got apprehended before they reached the Down Below, which will cost them. Hence, Bernard decided to spin things at the Mechanical by stopping any food or other supplies from getting through to the Down Below, thus rattling the people and causing much chaos there. The food that they did have saved up had been poisoned with what appeared to be rat poison, which indicates that Bernard might have some of his people amongst the Mechanical working on things. Even though it felt like his plan might work though, luckily the people down below had some friends from the upper floors when some supplies were dropped through the chutes because of the Juliette Lives campaign. As they enjoy their food at the time, the realization that they have to work through this hits them, and Knox has been cooking up quite a backup plan all this time. They've been working on armor and other things against the raiders and barricades, but something they don't think twice about is the black sheep amongst them who might have poisoned their food. Maybe that will be worked upon in future episodes. It did appear that they don't have anybody at the Mechanical to follow up on the details at the silo, because Sims had to use Kennedy to brew the chaos earlier that led to him getting shot. Maybe Bernard has been working on things at different levels, as he has a lot more control than we thought he did, and he'll need this now more than ever, considering Billings isn't working for him anymore. The people at Mechanical break through the barricade and press against the armed raiders, forcing them to set the barricade 10 levels higher. This gives them access to and prevents Bernard from stopping them from accessing food and other resources. So the Mechanical has already shown some part of what an uprising could look like from their side. Sheriff Billings takes control. A major part of the episode focuses on Sheriff Billings as he continues his investigation into what happened before Juliette Nichols was apprehended and what Patrick Kennedy knows. Things that force Juliette to get out of the silo. He gets strict orders to apprehend Knox and Shirley, but he instead focuses on his investigation, and in the process, he helps Kennedy recover from his wounds. As he dives deeper in, his wife Kathleen decides to take matters into her own hands and pay him a visit at the mechanical. She takes Dr. Pete's help to get through the barricade with the excuse of a medical emergency. Pete comes in handy as Kennedy's bullet wound requires serious treatment to make sure Billings kept his end of the deal regarding the exchange of information. To start the investigation Bernard had ordered, Billings reaches Walker and is asked for some information on her wife, McLean. Later, Billings informs her that McLean isn't in the usual holding cells and might be in seclusion for high-profile suspects, who might be of major interest to the authorities. But before that, Billings gets the idea of what happened in the minutes before Juliette was apprehended, including the broadcast she managed to do using the hard drive that indicated how the world outside actually looked. Patrick Kennedy's warning about not wanting to know this information becomes somewhat true, as Billings seems to start making sense of the events surrounding them by connecting the dots. In the end, he confronts Knox and Shirley and asks them about what happened to Meadows, only to learn from them that she was killed before they made it to her. Billings reaches out to Bernard and states that he's found both the fugitives, but they'll be kept safe while he investigates the murder of Judge Meadows. It becomes clear to Bernard that Billings has finally chosen a side that might be changing the winds inside the silo now. Since the past few episodes, we've been seeing Billings try to come to terms with the events surrounding Juliette, and also the new developments and changes in the silo. But now it seems that he's on a path that Juliette had laid out for him, as he looks to crack the code inside the silo by using the rules of the silo itself. In contrast, Bernard focuses on acting immediately by using the people under his control. Billings breaks through it, and investigating for the truth might be a big push to Bernard's plans. Billings is so much in control of his actions that the syndrome's effects have also started disappearing slowly, so what Meadows had said about the true reasons for the syndrome might be true, considering she had mentioned it to be an effect of the psychological impact associated with living inside the confinement of the silo. Now that Billings has answers that go out of the walls of the silo, he's truly more aware of things, and that frees him from some of the rules that are imposed on the people inside the silo. Earlier, he had to take herbs to reduce the symptoms of the syndrome, but now it seems that they've disappeared on their own. So Billings is on the right path with the right answers to the question, and he might be useful to the rebels after all. Lucas is the Shadow. Billings is not the only one breaking codes and figuring things out, as Lucas might be on the same path but in a different manner. A manner that suits Bernard and his curiosity about what's inside the hard drive, particularly the cryptic letter that the former sheriff of the silo left over. Even though Lucas had a stroke of bad luck early in this season, with the punishments and the loss of trust from Juliette, it seems like things are improving, even though Bernard is only using his knowledge for his benefit. But Lucas might just be the only person who has shown that he can figure out stuff and solve problems based on his observation skills and IQ. He proved it by figuring out the Caesar shift for the letter, which made him more worthy of Bernard. This is a time when Bernard might be at his lowest and alone, because there's no one he can confer with before making his administrative decisions. Things have gotten so bad that he had to go and talk to Meadows' corpse, someone who was probably the last friend he had. Around this time, Sims had reached Bernard's office only to discover Lucas there, and this is the moment where the two possible candidates for the Shadow's position face each other. But Sims' chances had gone lower since his wife managed to clearly outsmart Bernard when she could explain her actions clearly, focusing on how it wasn't against the protocol at all. Finally, during their attempts at decrypting the letter, Bernard realizes that Lucas needs higher access, which is when he makes him his shadow. Even though it didn't feel like he gave it a second thought, because this position has been something he's been working on for quite a while now, he will definitely benefit a lot by giving Lucas this chance, considering he's oblivious to the true nature of things, and might be a good puppet for him to use for the time being. Once Lucas discovers the truth, we'll discover the true shades of his character in the series. As someone who was once almost romantically involved with Juliette, he has a lot of things depending on him for the sake of the future of the silo. Solo and Juliet's Deal. While things at Silo 18 might be looking good, there's still a growing fear, something that we might forget as people are slowly breaking the rules and the protocols inside it. This same pattern was something that had happened in Silo 17 and eventually led to the demise of a large population of people inside the silo. So the need for Juliette to return with answers to Silo 18 is ever more important at the moment. Juliette, who was last seen unconscious due to the infection from her wound, is seen on the bed of the same room with a bandage wrapped around her wound. When she comes to her senses, Solo is seen cooking something for her, and it becomes clear that he has been treating her and saved her life. But something is missing, as the helmet couldn't be seen around her alone, and when she asks for the suit, Solo mentions that it's in a safe place and he can't let her use it to return to her silo yet. Now that sounds quite ominous, considering Juliette has to save her people, but Steve Zahn delivers this request in the most non-ominous fashion ever. He asks her to make a deal, wherein she will help work the pumps of this silo so that the water could be stopped, and thus save Solo in return for him saving her life. So it's clear that she doesn't have a lot of questions at the moment, but keeping him might help her out in the long run. Under the circumstances, she might benefit from solving this issue, as this would also allow her to get a chance to explore the silo more properly, and maybe find the mysterious tunnels everyone's been talking about. Important details. The Juliette Lives campaign might be taking quite the storm, because people are reacting much more than we might have expected. People from other levels helped out the mechanical when they were being prevented access to food and other resources. So we do have more rebels on other floors along with the people of mechanical, which means that the uprising is much closer than we might have expected. At the same time, we have something called the Legacy, something that Bernard has mentioned twice now. When Lucas is closer to solving the message, Bernard mentions that he needs access to the Legacy, and to do that, he makes him swear in as his shadow. The last time Bernard mentioned it, he talked to Meadows and showed her the VR goggles. Earlier, it felt as if the Legacy could be an AI, or something related to larger access to information in the silo. Still, now it feels as if some information might only be available to people who get to be in the shadows. Maybe it's an AI, but I feel like it's some sort of information-bearing system that stores knowledge passed on from people who have previously occupied the position. That stands for a good explanation for the title of the thing itself. Whatever this Legacy is, it might be the best means for Lucas to solve the message and put Bernard ahead of Juliette in the race for the answers. Marvelous verdict. The boy who observed the stars finally gets to be the shadow of Bernard, and the only person to blame for this is Juliette herself. It's interesting how one character's actions changed the fate of other characters, a pattern very similar to when Sheriff Becker left the breadcrumbs for Juliette. But there's a lot to unpack in this episode, and even though nothing of much significance happens, with each issue resolving itself by the end of the episode, there are details sprinkled here and there, along with major developments. I personally found it funny when Knox and Shirley got interrupted each time they tried to have a romantic moment. If you like our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone!